Hey guys, take a measure with the video for you guys. In today's video, we're going to compare the new iPhone 14 Pro with the last year's iPhone 13 Pro. We're going to take a look at the hardware, the software, the camera, the battery life, and then finally compare whether it's worth upgrading from the iPhone 13 Pro to the iPhone 14 Pro or not, or what are some things to consider if you're going to be thinking about upgrading, or if you have upgraded, you might want to know what the difference are between these two phones. So let's dive right into it. So as you can see here on my left hand side here, it's the new iPhone 14 Pro and the new finish on it, which is this deep purple color, which we did an unboxing video for you guys, which we'll leave in the description section if you guys want to check it out. And on my right hand side here, it's the new version of the color iPhone 13 Pro Sierra Blue, which again is a new color for the Apple lineup here. So as you can see, both of these are the premium finishes or the new color that was introduced when they were released. Of course, the iPhone 13 Pro also came out later with the Alpine green color, which we did unboxing for as well. So if you guys want to look and check those out, go ahead and check those unboxing video for you guys. So first thing first is the one big thing you'll notice here besides that is these cameras have gotten bigger as time goes on. As you can see, if we hold it side by side on the 13 Pro here, it's smaller, and then on the 14 Pro they get bigger. So Apple just seems to increase the size of the camera. They both have these three camera, as you can see here, but on the 14 Pro there has been an update to the main camera, which is now 48 megapixel compared to only the 12 megapixel triple cameras on the 13 Pro lineup. So that's probably the biggest thing and why those cameras are huge. But besides that, aesthetically, if you take a look at it on the back here, the deep blue and the Sierra Blue, again, both are really premium finishes overall. It depends on, do you like the new purple? We had people have different reviews for it, but again, both of the finishes are quite interesting coming from Apple. And of course, from the front side, if you look at the display itself, you'll notice here the dynamic island. Both of the phones, of course, are 6.1 inch, so same side display, OLED display, which is the Super Retina XDR for this. So as you can see here, that top notch is probably the biggest thing if you're looking from the front side here. But besides that, there's nothing else going on between these two phones. So again, both of the phones from the side view, again, very lightweight phone. They're about 206 grams on the 14 Pro and then 204 grams. So in size wise and the actual weight of it, very negligible between these. It's not that one phone is heavier, although we did see an increased size in the camera. Not a big of an issue there. So that's kind of where we're getting at. So the next thing we want to talk about is the actual battery life between these two phones. Of course, as you know, both of the phones have really great battery life. So when based on Apple's test that they have run, they mentioned that the 14 Pro here gives you about 23 hours of battery life compared to the iPhone 13 Pro, which gives you around 22 hours of video playback. Essentially, both phones are considered what's known as all-day battery life phones, which means if on a single charge, you should be able to get through your day. And we've seen that comparing just the daily usage, you don't notice too much of a difference in terms of the battery themselves. So if you're using the phone, you might not get too much of a difference if you upgrade from one to another, and that's because the battery life hasn't been really improved as much. Of course, the software is what makes a difference on these phones, as we talk a little bit more about it. So one other, of course, difference between these camera, we did mention that there is the new 48 megapixel camera for the main one, but this other feature that you'll probably get here is this optical zoom. As you can see here on the photo here, we have these zoom level settings which have changed for this phone. But on the other thing you'll also notice is now a new feature for this camera is this action mode right here on the 14 Pro. So what is action mode? Basically, if you're running and recording, it should stabilize much better than the iPhone 13 Pro. But there is one thing that I do want to mention for you guys, just being honest, we have seen and users have reported on the 14 Pro is that there was an issue with the camera shaking, vibrating, and making noise, which is a big deal coming out of the launch of the 14 Pro, which a lot of users have complained. Apple did release a software update to fix that, and it did fix most of the devices, but that's something that you guys should know, and that's why we're mentioning it. So there was a slight hiccup on Apple's part, but again, being transparent, that's where it comes down to. Other thing to note about these phones are both of the phones are about same level of water resistant. You're able to take it under 6 meters of water for 30 minutes. So as long as there's no cracks or damage on the phone, both should be water resistant, as we mentioned as here. So those are other things to note. Now let's talk about the software of the phone. As you can see here, we're running actually iOS 15 on the 13 Pro, which you can update to iOS 16, and then the new iPhone, of course, 14 Pro comes with iOS 16 by default, so you don't have a choice here. And we started to test out some of these apps that you run on your daily to day basis. We noticed that really, again, both of the phones, when it comes to the display itself, again, they're going to run and open about the same. You really aren't going to notice much of a difference. The one thing we do want to mention is on the 14 Pro, they did update the chip. So you get that A16 Bionic chip versus the A15 Bionic chip. Now, are you going to really notice for a regular or any everyday user? You're probably not going to notice much of a difference. There is a 10%, of course, increase. Again, that 10% to your daily stuff, as you'll notice here when you're doing some quick test on opening application. Again, not really much to see there. It's not going to be too much that you notice here, even when it comes to just doing the simple stuff here, just browsing or just running our main apps that you normally do. Again, those apps will just pop up and kind of work as you go along, as you can see here. So the other thing we want to mention on the display is now on the 14 Pro, as you can see here, this always on display is on. Unfortunately, on the 13 Pro, you don't have that feature. As you can see here, if you go into the settings of the phone, so we'll go into settings here and show you guys this feature where it comes out to be that always on feature, which is going to be that option, which unfortunately we will not be able to get on the 13 Pro here. So, and finally, let's talk about the overall price between these two phones. If you're looking in the market for it now, the iPhone 14 Pro, of course, you can buy directly from Apple for $999 for the 128 gig, and both of the phones do go up to 1 terabyte. So storage wise, there hasn't been a big change in terms of the base to the maximum that you can get. On the other hand, the 13 Pro, the price have gone down somewhere between $100 to $150 if you're buying it new, and if you're buying it pre-owned from eBay or Amazon, which will leave some link in the description section, you can get $200-300 off of it if you're in the market between these two phones. So that's kind of the price difference between these two phones. Now let's talk about the main impact differences between these two phones if you're going to be considering the iPhone 14 Pro from the iPhone 13 Pro. So the main thing here you need to know about the 14 Pro, if you're going to be upgrading, is that it delivers about 69% higher peak brightness. So when it comes to peak brightness, the display on the 14 Pro is much brighter compared to the 14 Pro. You do get a better camera because of that 48 megapixel main camera. That is no brainer, just because of update in camera, which Apple does with a release of every single phone that they have. There is another new feature update on the Bluetooth. If you're a person that connects with a lot of Bluetooth device, there has been a newer Bluetooth version 5.3 on the 14 Pro. And of course, the other thing to mention between these two phones, as we mentioned, there is about 10% faster single core CPU increase on the 14 Pro compared to the other one. And on the 14 Pro, if you really look into the specs here, the type of memory that you're using, which is that LPDDR5, again, really technical, there is a faster memory, which means things should be storing much quicker on the 14 Pro. But again, at a molecular level, you might not really notice too much unless you are one of those person really doing some intensive IO or just simply doing a lot of multitasking. So when it comes to doing simple stuff from even gaming, you're not going to notice much difference, even if you're doing heavy graphic gaming, which both of the phones are capable of doing without any issues. And all of your basic social media stuff from streaming to audio, all of that is about the same. We don't see any improvement in the audio quality as well between these two devices that would say that one audio is better than another, or even the display itself. Besides that, the 14 Pro now, as you can see here, there is no top notch, and slightly better in terms of when it comes to brightness of the screen. So between these two phones, if we were to say if is it worth upgrading, again, it's going to be solely up to you. Again, it's not going to be a big performance increase or battery increase, slight increase in terms of that display quality and the camera, and then you got that dynamic island, and then also this feature known as crash. So if you're in a crash, the 14 Pro does have those sensors built in, which the 13 Pro doesn't have that. So it can detect when you're in a car crash, that based on the sensors. That seems to be a big thing that Apple has pretty much came out said about the upgrade on this phone. So that's going to our take it between these two phones. Again, is it worth upgrading to it? Of course, if you have the money for it, but if you really don't care about those minor details, staying on the 13, it's good as the 14 Pro here. So hopefully you guys found this video helpful. If so, make sure that like and subscribe button. So we want to hear from you guys. If you guys you're using either of these devices, which one are you using? Leave a comment in the comment section with your experience so far. Thanks for watching, guys. See you guys next time.